Hi friends, welcome to Concepts of Geology online classes. We were on Economic Geology Part 1, Module 4 and learning about texture paragenesis of ore and gangue minerals. Today we will go through a case study that is a practical example of paragenetic analysis. Actually, this class was not scheduled on the syllabus of the Part 1, but I realize this is really needed for the best understanding. The topic may be allotted on the syllabus here. Okay, I am using slideshow for this class as the paragenesis will be established on the basis of analysis of some microscopic photographs. Okay, so let's start. The topic is chosen from a real work which belongs to my own dissertation project. The Singhbhum shear zone is a ductile shear zone and one of the most ancient economic mineral belts in India. This is well known for its copper and uranium deposits, and we will do our job on the copper mineralization. Okay, so first observe the title of the topic. This is Structural Control and Paragenetic Study of Copper Mineralization. Now see, mineralization may be controlled either by geological structures like suppose along a fault or foliation plane or along the axial plane of a fold. Okay, there the host rock is not at all important, rather the structure is more reliable to found the mineralization. Okay, they are called structurally controlled mineralization. On the other hand, some mineralization may be confined within a particular lithology and may be independent of structures. For example, suppose a diamond hosted in kimberlites. Okay, the kimberlites may be structurally deformed, may be disturbed, but the diamond will be confined within the lithology only. Okay, this type of deposits are called lithologically controlled. In our case, copper mineralization in Singhbhum copper belt, the mineralization is along a foliation plane on a schistose metamorphic rock. So this is structurally controlled deposit. Okay, and the meaning of paragenetic study, you know, this is the time sequence of formation. So I think the meaning of the title is clear now. We will investigate the control on mineralization through microstructural analysis and then we will establish the paragenesis. Okay, this is the study area on the map. This is under North Singhbhum orogen and coming under Singhbhum craton. Okay, the megascopic view of the area. Okay, now we know very well megascopic view means the panoramic view or the field view. Observe the area is hilly and consisted of weathered brownish red rock. Okay, this high iron content indicates the leaching of the soluble elements. The rocks are metamorphosed and possesses foliation. Although not clear from the picture, but malachite and azurite commonly found in these rocks. Can you guess what is the geological significance of this picture? Guess. This is the so-called Goshen zone. Fine. Boxwork textures are readily found here and the malachite and azurites are the product of weathering of hypogene copper minerals. Fine. Now see the microscopic view of the host rock under plain polarized light. Okay, the schistosity is very clear from this picture. The general name of the rock is chlorite, biotite, muscovite, quartz schist. So now we will focus on our work. We are going to establish the paragenetic sequence through a microstructural analysis. No chemical analysis will be there. I told in the last class that there is no standard method of paragenetic study. What I did was first find the deformation history of the rock. That means how many stages of deformations are there and what are the result of each stages. After that we will identify the ore minerals and study the texture to relate them with the deformation events. This will need reflected light microscopy as most of the ore minerals are opaque in transmitted light. And at the last we will establish the paragenesis and accomplish our goal. So let's try to find the answer of the first question. Now on this photomicrograph see the rock is showing a well developed schistosity and myelinotized fabric. Okay, the rock possesses primary cohesion, foliation and a fine matrix percentage more than 70%. So the rock grades into high shear strain zone rock, namely myelinite or ultra myelinite. Fine. So after that general view, we will try to find the evidences of deformation in the rock. Okay, so that's need microstructural analysis. This will help us to find the deformation history. Clearly, the presence of foliation plane in the rock indicates the rock is deformed or subjected to stress. Okay, now see this picture. This is a pre-kinematic texture where the porphyroblast, which was formed period to deformation, is wrapped by the foliation, which is the product of deformation. Okay, the left picture is the schematic diagram you find on the most of the standard textbook. Okay, so this is the porphyroblast, and see the foliation is wrapping it. So clearly this porphyroblast is a pre-kinematic crystal. Fine. Now see, these are some bent or deformed quartz crystal. Okay, what is the evidence of deformation here? The undulose extinction. Okay, this is called the undulose extinction, the wavy nature of extinction. Now note here, never tell undulose extinction is an identifying property of quartz. This is not an identifying property of normal quartz. This is only the identifying property of the deformation event. Okay, this is formed when the lattice of the quartz is disturbed due to intense stress. Clear? This is also a pre-kinematic texture because these quartz grains were pre-existing and deformed during the stress event. Fine. So we have seen two examples of pre-kinematic texture, the wrapping porphyroblast grain and the quartz grains with undulose extinction. Now in this slide we will see an example of post-kinematic texture. Okay, something more interesting. See, this is called a polygonal arc, a typical post-kinematic texture. When a large grain is folded due to deformation, the lattice of the grain is disturbed, and to recover that strain, the grain is recrystallized and form small strain-free subgrains. Okay, so that folded mica grain was pre-kinematic and now it is recrystallized into smaller strain-free subgrains. So these smaller mica grains are post-kinematic. Fine. This is again an example of post-kinematic texture. Concentrate on the marked mica grain, this and this. Okay, they are lacking any particular orientation. They are just perpendicular to the main foliation. Okay, this is the main foliation and they are laying just perpendicular with the main foliation. This indicates these grains have come into existence after the foliation formed. Okay, they are post deformational. This texture is called cross mica fabric. This texture is very well known to all. During shearing, the ductile porphyroblast rotate along the sense of shear. Okay, they are very helpful to decipher the direction of shear. Here on the picture the sense is clockwise. See, this is called a dextral shear, although this does not have any significance unless the sample is oriented, and in this case the sample was not oriented, but this is drawn for the understanding. From the previous slides we do not have now any doubt about deformations. Deformations were there. We have seen post-kinematic and pre-kinematic textures that clearly confirm the deformations event. Okay, now we will integrate the picture and try to find out the stages of deformation. Now see, this picture clearly showing two stages of deformation. See, there are clearly two distinct foliation. First one is S1 and the second one is S2. Fine, I will not go into deep, but these are called SC fabric. The horizontal foliation, which is the most prominent one and marked as S1, this is called the C surface. See here, this is parallel to the shear zone boundary. Fine, and the oblique foliation, which is marked as S2, this is called the shear foliation or the S surface. Actually, these S2 foliations were the microlithons of S1. During the second stage deformation or the shearing event, a new foliation is created on the microlithon zone, and this is the S2. Okay, so this is SC fabric in the rock. We will discuss those in deep in any definite class later. So let's summarize the deformation chapter. Two main deformation events were prominent from the SC fabric growth, from which the S1 has resulted, that is designated as D1. Fine, and that caused S2 that was designated as D2. There may have some mineral growth associated with this deformation events. They are designated as M1 and M2 respectively. Okay, now prior to D1, that is on the pre-deformational period, there must have a primary bedding foliation on the precursor rock which was pellitic in nature, because this is a schist. So the precursor of the schist must be a pellitic rock and they should have the primary bedding foliation. Those bedding foliations are not traceable now due to intense deformation in the rock, so that foliation is designated as the S0. Okay, this is the sedimentary bedding and should conceived into mind. Now recall the picture where we saw the cross mica fabric grains. Okay, those grains were not showing any preferred orientation, but definitely that was an event of neomineralization. Fine, this is designated as M3 and probably there may have an deformation event associated with that also. Okay, so that probable event is designated as D3. Okay, fine, this is the growth of cross mica fabric. So we are getting 3 events of deformation, D1, D2, D3, 3 events of metamorphic mineral growth, M1, M2, M3, and 2 distinct orientation S1 and S2. Fine, so this is the summary of deformation. So we have found the answer of the first question. We have at least 3 events of deformation, D1, D2 and D3. Fine. So let's move to the second question, that is the relation between the deformation and the ore mineral growth, because we are ultimately going to establish the ore paragenesis. Fine. Now first we have to identify the opaque minerals we have seen till now, and then we have to find the relationship between their growth and the deformation events. The identification is done under reflected light microscope. See, there are mainly 3 phases. Okay, euhedral to anhedral grains, these are pyrite grains, and this is totally anhedral chalcopyrite, and these diamond shaped grains are of magnetite, or we will refer as oxide grains here. Okay, I will not going into the identification part. So in summary, we have 3 phases: pyrite, chalcopyrite and oxides. Now see the relation between the pyrite grains and the foliation. Okay, this horizontal foliation was the most prominent foliation and was designated as S1. That was the result of D1 event. Fine. See, this foliation is just wrapping the pyrite grain. Okay, and also observe here that the pyrite grain is sheared. So these are indication of the pyrite grains are period to S1, because S1 is wrapping it, and during the formation of S1 the pyrite grains become sheared. Here the event of shearing is more evident. Okay, the porphyritic grain of pyrite has rotated due to shearing or drag in the foliation. This is a kind of ductile deformation, you know. Observe, the grain is containing quartz as inclusion, but definitely essentially no mica is there. So clearly pyrite is period to D1 or grown during D1, but definitely this is period to S1 because it is not containing a single grain from that foliation. That means the growth of the pyrite has completed before the growth of the mica grains, I mean before the growth of the S1. Fine. Now the story of pyrite is closed here. Okay, clearly they are period to S1, and now we will concentrate on the second phase, that was the chalcopyrite. See, these subhedral chalcopyrite grains are containing S1 foliation just as inclusions. Okay, so they are definitely younger than S1 because we have learned in the last class that the included phase is older than the host phase. Okay, so here the chalcopyrite is younger and the inclusion is older. Fine. Also observe that this chalcopyrite grain is containing a cross mica fabric as again inclusion. So that means the growth of chalcopyrite outlast the D3 event on which the cross mica fabric grew. Okay. Now again see this picture. This is the grain of chalcopyrite again. The chalcopyrite is oriented along the S1. That means the growth is foliation controlled. Fine. The mineralization fluid was traveling through the pre-existing foliation, that was S1, and that deposited the chalcopyrite grains. Okay, so this is the essence of structurally controlled deposit. See here. Now come to the last phase, that was the oxide grains. They are neither deformed nor showing any orientation along any foliation. The perfect euhedral nature is indicating an unobstructed growth. Fine. They are post-deformational and grown in the intergranular cavities. The event of shearing has imposed more porosity in the myelinotized rock, which allows the hydrothermal fluid to pass through and made the mineralization come into existence. Okay. So study of the textures of the 3 phases are completed now, and now we have got the answer of the second question also. Okay. The correlation between the deformation events and the mineral growth is established. Now we can find the relative ages of the minerals. Okay, that will be the ultimate goal, the paragenetic sequence. See, this is how the paragenetic sequence is represented graphically or pictorially. Okay, the length of these lines are indicating the presence of the mineral during any particular deformation event. Okay, so very clearly pyrite is the oldest mineral, chalcopyrite is the intermediate phase, and the youngest phase is the oxide, which is the post deformational. Fine. This dotted portion is indicating the portion is not definite, but rather it is indicative. Okay, we do not know how much pre-deformational it is, but definitely it is period to S1, that means it is period to deformation. Okay, but their ductility during the shearing event is indicating maybe they are growing during that deformation phase, that is D1, but definitely their growth ceased before the formation of S1. Okay, and see, this chalcopyrite is marked on the D2 and D3 and dotted on the post deformational event. Why? Because they are containing S1 as inclusion, so their growth started after D1. This is the end line of D1. Okay, so their growth started after D1. Okay, and may be continuing during D3 because they are also containing cross mica fabric as the inclusion. Okay, and after that we do not know up to which time they were growing. They may be post deformational also, that is why this line is extended by dots. Okay, now the oxide grains do not have any confusion, they are definitely post deformational because they are not oriented at all along any fabric, or they are not deformed also. They are typically euhedral, that means their growth is unobstructed. The event of shearing is increasing the porosity of the mineralized rock, which is allowing the mineralized fluid to travel through, and this is causing the oxide grains to come into existence. Okay, by this we have completed the paragenesis part. On the next class we will start the learning on fluid inclusion. Okay, keep following, share and subscribe the channel, and of course press the bell icon to get upload notification first. Okay, goodbye, thank you for watching.